Bon dia a tothom.
Good
Benvingudes.
morning, everyone. Welcome to this third session of the threefold series of online debates organized by DIPLOCAT and the Barcelona Time Use Initiative for Healthy Society Association on municipal best practices and time use policies. First of all, I would like to start by sincerely thanking the speakers who are here with us today for their participation, and also to encourage our listeners who are following us on YouTube to address your questions and comment via the chat function. We live in absolutely crucial time when it comes to reorienting time use policies in organizations and public administrations. And to do so, we need to redefine timetables and spaces to ensure we're committed with local products and services, the digitization of our work, etc. In addition, the pandemic has sped up and modified existing initiatives that are likely to transform whole cities and our daily habits. These are changes that are here to stay, no doubt. As you know, the aim of DIPLOCAT is to promote international dialogue and to build bridges between Catalonia and the rest of the world. And we do this through international debates and best practice exchange meetings like the ones we have held so far and the one we will discuss today as part of this lecture series. During the previous two sessions, we found out about experiences from Catalan municipalities as well as European municipalities that are being implemented as part of their public policy projects, focusing on time use with a view to improving the quality of life of their citizens. Today, as part of this last event, we will be talking about the direct effects that the organization of time has on people's physical and mental health when we adapt to work-related, educational, social, and leisure timetables, which set the pace of our cities and towns, and which are not always the healthiest of choices. We will therefore speak about chronobiology and how little by little this concept is being integrated, even if it's still in a budding stage, into a number of local policies. That's it for me. I just wish you all a very good day. And I now give the floor to Jean-Yves Boulan, who's the coordinator of the European Network of Cities for Time Use. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all for having invited me to participate in this event. I would like to devote just a few minutes to speak to you about this network, this European Network of Cities for Time Use, which brings together several local organizations. And I would like to remind you that this network was set up at the behest of the Barcelona Authority. These started at the provincial level. And first, there were several talks organized in Barcelona with participants from different European cities, some of them from France, Spain, but also Germany, Finland, and the Netherlands. So at the end of 2012, I think it was the Barcelona provincial government that requested from us, given that there were several difficulties in continuing to dynamize this network, they asked us as a territorial authority, which is the association that brings together cities and towns, as well as local municipalities implementing this type of policies. We have over 30 cities as members, so they asked us to be in charge of moderating this network and to keep it alive. And I have to say that it wasn't easy. In December 2013, there was a seminar that took place in Paris, which meant that all local authorities interested in this network could participate. There were about 30 municipalities, 5 Italian cities. We also had different territorial and local administrations from France. Barcelona was also there. And there were other participants who expressed their interest, especially from Italy, but also in Spain, Belgium, and the Netherlands. However, they couldn't come for budgetary reasons. And well, unfortunately, that that happened too. And I have to say that there were 5 different types of expectations raised, which are basically the exchange of experiences among different administrations, so several kinds of initiatives to unite and to share a common language, to reinforce the legitimacy of time use policies at the national and local arena, also to promote time use policies in Europe on the basis of recovering the European Council recommendation, which in 2010 had adopted a resolution, a recommendation called social time, leisure time, when planning policies. So it's important to understand the social and leisure time when planning policies. So this is an important element in order to give a new life to all of these time use policies, and also to create common projects, which is why we set up several task forces and working groups regarding public policies, as well as the different time structures and timetables, as well as projects regarding our citizen participation in the creation of these time use policies as part of a co-design process, which is the term that is used, but also to dynamize and to animate this network. I have to say that there was yet another meeting held within the framework of these temporalist meetings with participants from different countries. And as part of this meeting, we asked several institutions from the Netherlands to participate. Unfortunately, they couldn't come. And during this second meeting, we wrote up several ideas on 4 pages and different languages, and we decided that this network had to continue working with European support, with financial support, with a program called Europe for Citizens, and the city of Bergamo in Italy played the role of directing the project. They were project managers, and we also had Bolzano, Barcelona, Bilbao, the city of Gervier, for instance, in Belgium, and in the case of France, the Tempo Territoriale network. Truth be told, and there was always positive feedback, even though we were not officially recognized as we expected. And finally, this initiative was abandoned. That was the main obstacle along the way. However, I have to say that this has been a very rich period regarding the changes. So to finish, I would like to say that today, just like our moderator said, we are living in a key moment regarding time use policies, because on the one side, we have the Barcelona Initiative that you're all very familiar with by now, as well as the future time pact or time use planning. And then we have the pandemic, which needless to say has had very negative effects, but it has also been quite a chaotic time that has allowed us to reinstill time use policies and to attach them new legitimacy. In France, there are many texts that have been published about how the pandemic has impacted social time. The lockdown, and when we left it behind, has also meant quite an impact on time use policies. This was present before, obviously, but the way we considered work and personal life, multi-purpose tactic, town planning, the flexible city, this has all been imposed by the pandemic, as well as the climate change crisis. And it requires us to change the way that we think, that we eat, and that we take a rest from work. So I believe that in Italy, there's been a new movement, something that we had worked on back in the year 2000, which is the setting up of the European Academy for Time Uses, where apparently there should be politicians, NGOs, actors, and so on and so forth, different stakeholders. We requested support from the European Union for this project, and we are currently negotiating. Hopefully, these will be launched during the Time Use Week, the World Week devoted to time use. So without further ado, I will now give the floor to María Ángeles Rol. Good morning, everyone. If you allow me, I will now share my screen. And I would like to introduce how important chronobiology is and biological rhythms in our day-to-day. Now, the first thing I would like to say is to thank the organizers for being here and also to congratulate both the organizers and the speakers for this wonderful initiative because bringing chronology closer to society, this very interesting field, is an excellent initiative. Now, in order to give you some snapshots about how significant biological pace and rhythm is, I'll start by telling you a story. Ever since life developed on our planet, did this in a changing cyclical series, moving from dark to light, but also from season to season, which meant that from a biological point of view, for all organisms, it was important to develop devices to measure time and to sync up their biology and to anticipate to the cyclical changes and to know when the right time was to migrate or to reproduce. This, in turn, means that we need to have some kind of biological clock. Well, in the case of mammals, we are mammal too, this biological clock is located here, deep into the brain on the hypothalamus nucleus. However, the story is a bit more complicated because we know now that on top of this master clock, we also have a whole circadian system that not only includes this main pacemaker, but also peripheral clocks in pretty much all kinds of tissues and organs, whose activity is also controlled by this master clock as part of a hierarchical structure of sorts. However, this clock controls all kinds of physiological variables. It organizes physiology based on nervous signals, as well as, for instance, melatonin. And as a consequence of this, pretty much all kinds of physiological outputs that we can think of, such as sleep cycle, light, dark cycle, motor activity, body temperature, heart pressure, or hormonal patterns, they all follow a 24-hour cycle. For instance, we all know, especially if we have young children, that in the afternoon, they're a bit more dynamic. This has to do with circadian rhythms. Even though they do not fit that 24-hour schedule, they have a slightly longer clock. In humans, it's 24.2 hour rhythm. It's like an old clock that needs to be wound up properly. And the way to readjust this exactly to 24 hours on the dot, as what it can be expected, is the whole transition from light to dark. So this whole cycle is the main signal to set our biological clock in order. However, timetables are also important when we do sports, physical activity, and when we are fed, when we eat, which are extremely important for these peripheral clocks. However, social contact is also important for us from that point of view. On top of this, some of these physiological signals that follow this 24-hour cycle, such as this sleep-wake cycle, also impacts how we react to darkness. So if I wake up late in the morning, that takes away light from the day for me, which then feeds back into the system. However, it is not only important to know how rhythms oscillate throughout this 24 hours cycle, there needs to be an appropriate ratio, a phase ratio among them, as we call it. These are like the notes on the sheet music that we read. If we want this symphony to sound right, then it needs to be properly conducted. However, if for different reasons these rhythms are not in sync and they do not follow our sleep-wake cycle or the light-dark cycle, this internal order is lost. So this music becomes noise. This noise has a name. It's called circadian disruption or chrono disruption. And there are different causes, either because we are exposed to light at night or the melatonin discharge level, other conflictive signals for our clock, for instance, snacking at night, being too, sedentarian to have constant environmental temperature when we cross different areas, and we suffer from jet lag. And recently, we can also include social jet lag, which is brought about when the center of our sleep on day works differs more than 2 hours from how we sleep during the weekends, which is quite common among young people and working people. Also, shift work, obviously, some ocular or eyesight pathologies, because that's one of the gateways of light information, and aging itself. We also know that this chrono disruption has consequences for our health, which are higher risk of suffering metabolic syndrome, cognitive and affective impairments, cardiovascular diseases. There's also disorders in terms of sleep and reproduction, higher risk of cancer, breast cancer, colorectal cancer, especially among people who work at night, and premature aging. Which is why it is extremely important to keep our health and our quality of life for our internal timing, our biological clock, to be in line with the environmental timing, that light-dark cycle. That depends on where we live, obviously. But there's a third kind of time, which is called social timing, external timing, which sets both our work and our leisure timetables. If we want to maintain our health and our circadian rhythm, we need to reconcile these three biological timings. Let me just mention regarding this internal timing that we don't have the same timing set inside us. Sometimes people speak about owls, which are the evening chronotypes, those that can have no problem because they can stay up late, but during the morning they're very cranky, they feel tired, they need sleep, and they don't feel like having breakfast. However, we'll have larks, which are very morning people, people who get up and are very active and they feel hungry. However, at a certain time in the evening, at 10 or 11, they just collapse and they go to sleep. Most of us are in between these two kinds of chronotypes. However, our internal timing also helps us adjust with varying degrees of flexibility depending on our age. Flexible time, for instance, is great for evening chronotypes because they do not force them to wake up early in the morning, whereas lark people or morning people can do so. So this brings us to work time. Let us imagine that we need to go to work at 8 in the morning. This means that before that, we need to count how long it takes us to move from our house, from our domicile. That's important. The time that we will spend in terms of our personal hygiene and set things in order at home. And then we need to add to that time or to subtract it. And that's how we set up our alarm clock. Now, if we want to keep sleep time within advisable limits from 7 to 8 hours, if I need to wake up at 6 in the morning, at the very most, I shouldn't go to bed later than 10, right? So that my sleep center is about 2:30, the middle sleep. However, the more time we devote to these tasks, given that there's a fixed moment to go to work, what we take away from is sleep because we need to go to work at a given time. That is why these kind of initiatives that will be discussed by all of our speakers are extremely important because somehow they all ponder different initiatives among experts to improve the quality of life of all people, which is a fundamental aspect nowadays. And obviously, they try to maintain societies within sustainability ranges. That is why, for me, it is an absolute pleasure to introduce the speakers who will speak right after me, and I will introduce them one by one. I would like to remind everyone who is following us that as of this very moment, they can send their questions through the chat on YouTube so that we can answer them during the roundtable.
I will start introducing the different speakers. I will start with Madame Anne Lefloc, if she can very kindly switch on her camera and microphone. Good morning, welcome, Madame Lefloc, and I apologize in advance for my French pronunciation. I don't speak French at all. Good morning. She is the mayoress of Chapelle de Fuderet. It's not only French, but Breton, from Brittany. And she's also the vice president of Rennes Métropole. She is in charge of the Time Use Office. In that office, they try to organize time territorially, and there is the involvement of a whole French network that work on time use policies to try and adapt public service times to the needs of users, with the final aim of improving their quality of life. So it's an extremely interesting experience that she will share with us in a second. So please, Madame Lefloc, you have the floor. It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having accepted our invitation. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. Well, actually, the city of Rennes and the metropolitan area has a time use office. We've had it since, well, for many years, since 2002, I believe, and that we founded the time use office to reflect on how public policies can take into account time passing in the decision-making process. Time use policies are reflected and implemented in our projects and then are implemented through actions that we take. And the ultimate goal is for the flow of the mobility, so to try and alleviate the traffic in the city and in the metropolitan area to improve the quality of life of our citizens and anyone who uses or who commutes in the city. So we would like to adapt and accommodate to life paces and rhythms, and we would like people to change their time uses and their schedules. So it's basically to say that collective life in the territory will be conducted in a better manner if we have less traffic jams. So if you allow me, I will now share a document with you. One of the first actions that we have taken in our metropolitan area was to flatten out basically reduce the class hours of the University of Rennes 2. We have, for example, in red, we see that between 7:50 and 8:40, that's the times in which the university students arrive at their faculty. And the idea was to postpone by 15 minutes the arrival of half of the students to the university. And as we see in the red curve, in 2012, we see the flattening out of the peaks because of that 15-minute postponement. This was done thanks to Keolis, which is the public underground company in Rennes. So this is one of the first actions that allowed us to basically reduce the occupancy of the underground by 15%. 17%, sorry. We worked hand in hand with public companies, and we also wanted to focus on employees, company employees, and we conducted a study. You have a graphic on screen. This is a survey on the commuting habits of our metropolitan citizens. And as you can see, everybody's day includes work in green and study in yellow. And as we can see on screen, we have basically two segments, the work or the working hours and the studying hours, time segments in which we leave our homes between 7:30 and 9 a.m. and between 4:30 and 6:30 p.m. in the evening. We all come back home at that time. And that's the main characteristic of the time use in the metropolitan area. In red, we have the noon peak, which is not as strong as other peaks. So what we have in mind is to raise awareness about these levers that we can use to manage time uses in terms of working hours, for example, or studying hours. Thank you. So that's about it from my part. Hello? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this presentation. We will collect all the questions and pose them at the end in the Q&A session. I will now hand it over to Gloria Plana, please. If you can switch on your camera and microphone. Good morning. Well, welcome once again. Thank you very much for having accepted the invitation. Gloria Plana was born in Girona, and she's the director, the territorial director of the employment service in Catalonia, in Girona. Not anymore. Well, someone hasn't done the homework here. I apologize. But you are currently in charge of the technical office at the University of Girona. Is that right? Okay. Oh, you were the territorial director between 2007 and 2011. My fault. Apologies. You're currently in charge of the technical management office at the University of Girona, and she's also vice mayor at the Girona Town Council. And she will present a very innovative experience, in my opinion, because it tackles the other aspect that we mentioned. We have been focusing on working hours, but now we need to wonder what happens with company experience. She will tell us about her experience with flexibility in the corporate world. The floor is yours. Thank you very much, Maria Angeles. Don't worry. I was the territorial director, not anymore, but I had that capacity. Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank DIPLOCAT and the Barcelona Time Use Initiative for this opportunity to tell you about our practice as the Girona Town Council. I'm here representing the Girona City Council to tell you about the Girona Network for Time Use reform, focusing on best practices in health, work-life balance, and flexibility, sustainability. So it's a golden opportunity to disseminate our work of recent years. So we are very grateful to both organizers and thanks to everyone behind the scenes. Now, this said, the Girona City Council has been committed with the time use reform from the very onset by developing pioneering measures in Catalonia to try and organize time in a more healthy and humanized manner for citizens. Girona and time use reform go hand in hand and have gone hand in hand from the very beginning. The time use reform, unlike other initiatives that have been promoted in Spain and other countries, focuses not only on the improvement of citizens' quality of life by taking actions to strike a better work-life balance, but also putting at the center of the debate more healthy time uses and working hours in harmony with circadian rhythms. And in the case of companies and organizations, we need to prioritize, number one, to have breakfast and lunch in more healthy time segments, and to be respectful with breaks and resting times. In 2015, the Girona City Council, with its mayor, Carles Puigdemont, we developed the punctuality commitment, which meant that the city committed with the time use reform. It was the very beginning. This is an assessment tool that aims to contribute to improve efficiency in time uses in spaces, communication channels, and to take part internally and externally in meetings and events of the city of Girona. So in that sense, we promote the organization of meetings in respectful time slots, or the plenary sessions of the city council. In the past, we had city council plenary sessions until 3 a.m. in the morning, so that measure was a very positive one. So the city of Girona spearheaded this time use reform, and we became the first city council to promote such a commitment. Such commitment has been broadened with two work streams: the Girona Network for Time Use Reform and the Time Pact. In 2016, this Girona Network for Time Use Reform was founded, which is a pioneering network in Catalonia, and we also only have a similar initiative in Barcelona with a BTUI. Basically, this network is made up by organizations that want to implement specific measures that have to do with time use reform. It's a unique and pioneering network because it focuses on the health of working people by applying more rational and humanized and respectful working hours with circadian rhythms. Working hours that help productivity and home office of organizations. Currently, we have over 50 organizations, and we are committed to achieving 60 organizations as members by 2022. 18% of the companies are big companies with over 400 employees, then middle-sized companies with over 50 employees that account for between 18 and 54%, and small-sized companies with less than 50 employees. We provide services to companies and manufacturing industries, for example, cork industries, pharma, etc. We have collected over 250 best practices, very different in nature, that point at many different rooms for improvement. Some examples of best practices that have been implemented by our company members, for example, have to do with lunch times. We should favor a lunch break at 1 p.m. We want employees to have breakfast at home, and the mid-morning break should be transferred to the lunch break. or to offer to the staff spaces to prepare their lunch and have it. We have also promoted a leadership scheme to improve time use management of teams, and that's targeted at production directors. In terms of time flexibility, in companies that have monthly peaks, employees have a series of working hours and overtime that can be made up for at the end of the year so that their working hours can be adapted to production peaks. Another best practice would be to be flexible in starting time and finishing time to strike a better work-life balance. We should also reduce the lunch break to be able to finish work earlier. At an organizational level, we should have only 1 hour meetings with strictly those people who are involved. Also, IT solutions to follow up on these agreements and on the conclusions of the meeting. Once the meeting has overrun for 5 minutes, once 5 minutes have gone by, after the meeting start, nobody else can join the meeting. And then there are free time slots that are free of communication without calls, emails, etc. So to try and exchange and promote knowledge and experiences in the field of time use management, over the years, we have organized different working sessions with the network organizations to be aware of best practices. And we have also invited guest speakers who are experts. For example, Dr. Trinidad Cambra, who is a specialist in physiology of the circadian system. She told us that rhythm alteration can have an impact on health and productivity. Or Javier Alvarez, a specialist in neurophysiology who specializes in sleep disorders. And he told us about sleep quality and its impact on people's life and productivity for companies. To give visibility to the will of companies and the City Council to go for better time uses to improve quality of life for people and employees and benefit companies' productivity. In the coming weeks, we will announce the awards, the Girona Awards for Time Use Reform. The Girona companies will be able to present or submit their best practices in the following categories: healthy habits, work-life balance, and efficiency. We would like to remind that the Girona Network for Time Use Reform is a unique Catalan experience, and also unique in Spain, of organizations that are committed with a different time use in companies and organizations, not only focusing on gender equality and work-life balance, but also focusing on health and the circadian rhythms. In 2018 and 19, as I explained at the beginning of my presentation, we worked on the Girona Time Pact, which is a project to promote a reorganization of time uses for citizens to improve our citizens' quality of life. That's a slow and difficult task because, of course, many players take part in that. But to begin with, we organized two gatherings for the education and hospitality and culture sectors. We identified 14 commitments to be implemented and also best practices in the field of education, hospitality, and culture in the city. 2021 will be the year to go back to these industries and sectors of the city, to go back to those commitments and to analyze whether the adaptation to the COVID-19 pandemic has paved the way towards healthier time uses, or whether it has added new challenges to achieve the so desired economic recovery, we will have to play a key role, and we are being very active as the Girona City Council to try and identify best practices in all these fields that I have shared with you. So that's about it for my part. Thank you very much for giving me the possibility to explain to you what we are doing. And of course, should you have any question, I'll be delighted to ask it. I'm sorry because I spoke very fast. Thank you very much for your presentation, a very interesting one. Let me now hand it over to Angel Puig. I think we have him online. Could you please turn on your camera? We had a technical hitch with him before. Maybe he cannot hear me. I can hear you, Maria de Los Angeles, but I have an issue with my camera. Can you hear me? Yes, we can. Okay. So Angel Puig is a technical architect, and he's also the Councillor of Culture, Heritage in the Argentona City Council. He's also in charge of education, culture, heritage, the archive, and the library. And he's also the president of the Cantor Museum. He's a very active and committed person, and he will share with us how important it is to have the right time uses for youth in their leisure activities in different organizations, and also the time use for the monitors that work with young people in these organizations. Thank you very much for having accepted the invitation. Oh, here I am. Thank you very much, Maria de Los Angeles. Thank you very much for the invitation to take part in this panel and to explain to you the following. In 2015, we started taking some measures in Argentona. Argentona has less than 13,000 inhabitants. It's 25 kilometers away from Barcelona. And as you can imagine, we are very close to Mataró, 5 kilometers away, with a population of 120,000 inhabitants, which means that we belong to a metropolitan area, and that has implications when it comes to taking action. As a city council, we agree with the Time Pact, and we want to promote a time use reform, and we commit to sharing it with as many organizations as possible. So we set up a panel for Time Pact with schools, shops, and the corporate world, leisure organizations, etc. We have two powerful industrial sites in Argentina, and we have corporate organizations, that we were able to work with. We focused very much, as Maria de Los Angeles said, on the youth. We want to influence them, basically thinking that in the future, those young people will have to give continuity to the changes that we implement. And we started working with this panel for a Time Pact. In the field of leisure in Argentina, because of our size, well, we have a youth organization that encompasses 150 young people and children. And that was a very important starting point, because as a leisure group, they straight away agreed with that and committed to that, and they proceeded to change their time use. which meant that they changed lunch times and activity times. So they would wake up earlier in the morning. They would have lunch and breakfast earlier, and they would organize their activities according to breaks. And very important, on weekends, they would go for an early finish to strike a better work-life balance. And I don't want to repeat what previous speakers have already mentioned.
This was a success, and I have to admit this because the families committed themselves and they had to accept that this change would be possible in their activities for their children. So they embraced it. The majority of them, there was no big problem, which meant that when we worked on the time use pact, and when we did this at schools, it was quite easy for all of these families to be in favor of this change. And then we started working also on schools so that they could change their timetables, which is something that we achieved only partially, because there were some schools that were quite reluctant, thinking that the Department of Education of the Catalan government is the one that set the pace for that, even though there's quite a lot of leeway for every school to apply the reform the way it fits them better. However, it did have an impact on the day-to-day of schools, which I must say was a very positive result. What else? Well, the City Hall itself understood that this was a commitment that we were taking, and we had to change all kinds of cultural and leisure activities organized by us, by the City Hall, and to make them compatible with all of these time changes, which is what we did. All kinds of theater performances that took place in town were moved in schedule. They happened earlier, as well as any other kind of city hall meetings, so that it could be compatible with all of the changes for quality of life, work-life balance, etc. So we touched upon all of these fields. What was most important? Well, to set up this table that I mentioned earlier, this board, to follow up on this and not to forget about changes, but rather to keep making headway, which is what we're doing right now, to understand what are the changes that took place in the past and are still maintained today. It is true, as it was said earlier, that the whole COVID-19 crisis has impacted us, not on the changes themselves, they're still in place, but rather in the ability of keep increasing the number of people committed with this local Argentina Time Use Pact. And this is true, it has to be recognized. There's been a slowdown of the number of participants joining the Time Use Pact, which is what we want to work on, what we are working on right now with new proposals, which I will present in due time. New proposals that obviously embrace a higher number of local shops and companies, and especially for children and young people, schools, leisure and cultural hubs. They should have this effective change. It has been effective, but hopefully it should continue in the future. So at a town like Argentina with a bit shy of 13,000 people, it's been relatively easy to implement these changes. Obviously, if we were to expand this to a bigger city. Sometimes we compare ourselves, maybe not compare, but we think of Mataró, which is a bigger city close by. Why? Because there are a lot of people from Argentina who go to work to Mataró. Same thing happens the opposite way. People from Mataró come to Argentina to work. So this sharing of the professional sphere has had repercussions as well on the time we devote to every task in our lives. This has been extremely important, and it's something that we see in the table of for time use pact and some of the concerns that we share. So in general terms, these have been the changes we have seen in town because of this new time arrangement. It has been talked about, I have to say, and obviously local shops have adjusted. Not all of them, but they most of them have welcomed this timetable reform, and this has meant that there have been changes in shopping habits for people in town and people who come to town to buy stuff. So there are four external complexes with dwelling units outside of the town in the outskirts, and they had to adjust as well, both in terms of children activities and in terms of shopping. And that's it for me. If you have any doubt or question, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you for this possibility to participate. Thank you very much, Angel, for your presentation. Now, if you agree, we will now begin with the discussion. I will launch a question for the three speakers, and then you can try to reply following the same order in which you've been speaking. The question is as follows. On the basis of your experience and everything you have experienced so far in terms of time use policies and their implementation, which do you think will be the challenges or the future difficulties so that these changes can remain in time and can continue to facilitate a healthier, more equal or egalitarian and more sustainable city? Ms. Vlog, we can start with you. Sure, no problem. Well, thank you for giving me the floor. We agree with this idea that it is important to understand how administrations must play a role from that point of view. They need to be an example for other people. They need to keep fighting against the imbalances regarding time use that we see, which is what we believe in our metropole network. Now, regarding the challenges, when it comes to our own policies and how to act on living paces. I mentioned a study amongst companies, and apparently most of them had been carried out in a district in Rennes. So 80% of employees in companies had a flexible timetable, but 90% ended up going exactly the same time in the morning, between 8 and 9. Even if they had liberty, they had the freedom to go there at any time during the day. So it was important for these companies to become more aware that at the end of the day, in the morning, to have that kind of leeway to know exactly when to start working could be interesting as well, to have them come at different times. And then with the COVID-19 crisis that came to us, well, that confirmed pretty much the same decisions that the Time Use Office had taken before. There's this general use of teleworking at least once or twice per week, so 2 days per week. We don't know if this will remain after the pandemic. Maybe we'll be working at least 1 day a week from home. So there's this wish, especially in the morning, to be able to stagger the number of people that come to the workplace so that we can avoid traffic snarls. And something else that we have implemented as part of our Red Metropole network is a kind of participatory map, if you wish, where everybody can pinpoint, they can indicate on the map what are the timetables with the highest number of people and what are the best times during the day to be able to move. So every person can key in their timetable and where they move from and to. We have also been working regarding teleworking in what we call co-working sites. so that people can share these working spaces from far away at a distance. And a third topic would be the creation of local spaces for people who need to work away from home. We're talking about sites that are offered by city halls. For instance, let's say someone has to check their email at first thing in the morning, and then they move to their workplace at a different time, which is not in the morning, when we no longer have that kind of traffic congestion on the road. So we see that there's this possibility to rearrange our working day and to do so around these ideas as well. So those tools are there at our disposal. We do not need to suffer these kind of problems anymore, especially in Rennes, in the city of Rennes. The main problem are traffic snails, so traffic jams on the road and on the street. And as Mr. Boulin was saying earlier, I would also like to mention what we organized, which is called Tempo Territorial. It will happen in November. It will be a series of meetings to speak about time. That's it for me. That's what I wanted to share regarding the challenges that we are currently facing in the city of Rennes. Thank you. We now give the floor to Gloria Plana. Okay. Well, the challenges that we consider regarding the future in order to develop these changes in time use, we believe that cities need to be fully committed in three different areas, which are health, equality, and sustainability. And they are two essential pillars for a better time organization that improves the quality of life of all our citizens. We will achieve a healthier city as long as we educate people on these notions. This has to be properly explained. We need to make it easier for citizens to remember, to take into consideration things such as it's important to respect people's rhythms and the paces of our own body with healthy food at healthy times as well, to respect people's resting time. Physical activity has to finish earlier. We need to also take into consideration lunch times as part of a healthy timetable in high schools, and also to organize extracurricular activities earlier. Also, evening leisure must happen earlier, and especially regarding the youth, so that we can avoid, as you already explained, Maria de los Angeles, this social jet lag during the weekends, which has an impact on the ability to concentrate and to offer proper academic performance. So what are the benefits that implementing these measures can bring about? Well, for instance, the increase of cognitive performance, as it has been said, personal well-being, the improve of our emotions, our mood, the quantity and the quality of our sleep, school or academic success, the prevention of diseases such as diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular diseases. Moreover, for a city to be more egalitarian and more sustainable, you can achieve that in general terms by syncing up the timetables of companies, institutions, schools, and everybody else. So to compact the working time as well as the opening times for local shops, also to introduce teleworking as part of timetable flexibility, to promote responsible consumption time slot, to implement measures towards digital transformation and technological innovation. And the results that we could glean from these are the improvement of social rights by prioritizing the care of our people, the promotion of responsibility in terms of domestic work, access for women to decision-making positions and to break the well-known glass ceiling, equal opportunities and less poverty, especially for vulnerable groups, resilience and the reduction of stress, especially amongst women, participation in community life, associations, organizations, and such. And at the end of the day, it is about um, aligning ourselves with the sustainable development goals established as part of the Agenda 2030, and to be able to face important challenges such as climate emergency, zero emissions, gender equality, responsibilities, harmonizing timetables, more competitive and healthy organizations, better organization management of work time, online communications. So with these technological advances, healthy timetables, and the implementation of healthcare recommendations, especially now because of COVID-19. That's it for me. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Gloria.
Thank you very much, Gloria. Angel? Thank you, Maria de los Angeles. Well, there's something that is common to everyone's experience, especially as part of our table for time use pact. There's a common denominator, which is that this time pact has to be achieved based on some general concepts as a country. So we believe that in 2025, this landmark that the Catalan government set for itself to make it possible that the whole country implements this change, well, this is something that has been tackled in the different debates that were held and the public events that were organized to present the time pact for the people of Argentina. We at the City Hall believe that after 6 years that have elapsed, there are still things that need to be tackled. There are shortcomings that need to be resolved. And that's something that we are doing right now. So by answering your question, we will set up a trade board for the whole municipality. Why? Because the trade or local commerce organization that is present today only accounts for a third of local shops. So it's important to have everyone on board so that this timetable reform can be implemented evenly. And same thing happens with the corporate realm with the corporations. There are two industrial complexes, as I mentioned. So it's important to have stakeholders that we can share all of this work for 6 years with. And however, if we don't have a certain balance among everyone to be able to implement this time pact everywhere, it will be very difficult to be able to achieve it in all of its different dimensions. And same thing goes for instance, the catering industry. And that's something that we're working on as well. Well, funnily enough, this has been one of the things that we didn't expect, that caterers and restaurant owners have organized themselves because of the measures that have had to be implemented because of COVID. So seizing this opportunity, now that they are organized, we want to work with them more closely. Why am I saying this? Because either we are able to reach out to all kinds of citizens in all of their organizations to make this possible, or otherwise it will be very difficult to reach this balance and to implement this time pact with the right timetable reform and everything that this change involves. That's it. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias. Bueno, quizá
Thank you very much. Well, to try and draw some conclusions and highlight the key aspects that have been discussed this morning, I would say that it has been made apparent that there's a long way to go, but also that these policies do work. And with your experiences, we realize that we can improve people's quality of life by implementing and instilling changes. Well, I will deal with information in a minute, but it's about changing life habits because they result in social welfare and in the common good. And maybe all of your experiences have been positively welcomed by the population because people were aware of the improvement they entailed. So maybe scientists, on the one hand, should be able to disseminate our knowledge to society for citizens to have information and for everyone to understand why these policies work. And apart from noticing and experiencing firsthand the benefits of adopted measures, but also in the world of politics and organizations, they should develop new political actions to more easily implement these policies. I really liked Madame Le Floc's sentence to try and put an end to inequality in relation to time. And it's important for organizations to promote activities to disseminate the actions that they are taking and the experiences that are being implemented and the health consequences of such actions taken. I'd like to thank DIPLOCAT and the Barcelona Time Use Initiative for a Healthy Society for organizing this kind of webinar. And I think that society should try to start improving its quality of life. We know there are three main health pillars: activity, exercise, diet, but also sleep. Sleep is one of the health pillars. And therefore, we need actions and mechanisms enabling us to strike a balance among the three pillars. We need to have good quality sleep. It's also true that the COVID-19 pandemic has stopped or stalled some of these initiatives, but it has had a positive side to it, which is home office, because it has taught us a lot about working hours flexibility, about work-life balance. And we will open up the Q&A session in a minute. I don't know which is the opinion of our guest speakers. Maybe this is here to stay, the home office, and it can be a new tool allowing us to kick off the time use pact that should be much more widespread than the initiative that you are developing in Barcelona. So I would invite the speakers to join me now. And I have a question for them, which is the following. I have a general question and then I have a more specific question for Angel. Would you be interested in knowing of other experiences that might be implemented nationally or internationally on time use policies? We can proceed in the same order so that we do not stumble upon. Madame Le Floch, would you like to, or would you be interested in initiatives that other municipalities might be implementing? What's your opinion on that? Do you think they can contribute something to you? Well, obviously, with this morning exchange, I've also taken notes of very interesting initiatives. Obviously, networking and exchanging experiences is always very inspiring and enriching. So collaboration means that you advance faster and with more efficiency.
Gloria,
Gloria?
A veure, jo entenc que, evidentment, no?
Well,
Tot allò que
obviously, yes.
s'està fent en altres llocs, en altres
If
ciutats,
other
ciutats,
places, other
doncs són
municipalities,
xarxes que
other
existeixen
organizations
com
are
bones
implementing
experiències,
similar
en aquest camp, evidentment que
projects and are good experiences in this field, of course, we are interested in knowing about them and implementing them here. Of course, what's useful for other municipalities can be useful for us. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. So yes, replicating for the good is very relevant. Absolutely. We would be happy to work together and network, as Madame Lefloc said. I fully agree. I don't want to repeat, but I agree with both, with Anne Lefloc and with Gloria. As I said, we are a small municipality and there's a lot that we can learn. We can also show and teach things that we have implemented, but it's very important to learn through exchanges and to be in touch with new experiences. Absolutely. Angel, we have a question from the audience. Daniel Gabaldon is asking that he hasn't really understood how you proceeded to change school times. Could you clarify that? Yes. In terms of time uses or school times, the only thing that we achieved was to change. So school start was moved to 8:30, lunch break at 1 p.m. And basically we were able to influence the high school times. The town high school stopped having classes in the afternoon and students would only attend high school in the morning. Some people were reluctant to that, but they've had these morning high school times or hours for some years to try and accommodate to this time use change. They basically break at 1 p.m. for lunch and they finish high school by 2:30 p.m. and leave for home. It's not exactly the high school hours that we had wished for because we wanted the lunch break to be sooner, to be earlier, but well, we wanted to influence more, but this was the outcome and it was achieved by working on the time use pact. In primary schools, it's more complex because of the school hours. They do have quite a long lunch break. So we basically achieved an earlier school finish in the afternoon. It didn't pose any problem. We were in touch with the education authorities of the different counties, and we shared it with the Catalan Education Department. Okay, thank you very much. I have one more question for you. Apart from all the actions, and since you all can access the population and you can disseminate information, how important do you think these education activities are? I think I said it before, and Gloria mentioned it too, because people welcome these policy changes positively, not only citizens, but also companies, businessmen and women. They welcome it positively if they understand why this is being implemented. So maybe in some of your experiences, you started off by organizing briefing sessions Probably in the case of Angel with schools, you maybe organized meetings with families to explain why the change was going to be implemented. But when you take decisions about public transportations or companies, how do you go about that? I can start. In the metropolitan area of Rennes, we focus on the idea of a common culture. All public policy decisions must be made with this gaze of temporary policy approach. That would be wonderful. But these are things that are implemented step by step, and each politician must be aware of the temporality of public policy making. And the companies with which we were in touch to conduct the different studies that we commissioned, well, they start to have awareness. So it's about sharing this common culture of time use. And by changing time uses by 15 minutes, we can improve the social welfare that you just mentioned. That's the underlying idea. But this time use notion must be appropriated by everyone, and it's about all of us being aware of it. Yeah, I fully agree with Ms. Lefloc. At the Girona City Council and the Economic Promotion Department, which is the one I'm in charge of, we usually or very often work in collaboration with the different industries: tourism, trade, employment, companies. So we organize task forces, so to speak. And in terms of the time use reform and the time use pact, this has to be discussed in these task forces. And that's how we proceeded from the very beginning with businessmen and women. So we explained them thoroughly what this was about. We organized many meetings, panel discussions. And as I said before, we organized exchange sessions for them to tell each other their best practices, and we have tried to support them and advise them. On the other hand, we need to convince citizens at large and the different industries. The toughest ones are tourism and trade and hospitality. We are Latin and we like having late dinners, partying late, and going to bed very late. So it's a mindset change that is required, and we need to be educational about it. We need to raise awareness, as Madame Lefloc said, and this will be the toughest one. This cannot be done overnight, and the work-life balance has to be worked on step by step in task forces with the different industries and education, mobility, hospitality, trade, well, all the sectors that have an impact on citizens. So there's a long way to go, indeed, but step by step. And I think that the pandemic, even if it's been very tough on us, maybe it has forced us to start adapting to a new time use. And this might be one of the very, very few positive things about the COVID-19. So we should tap into it and start working on awareness raising, education and training, as you said, Maria de los Ángeles. Well, that's precisely what we are promoting. I think it's key that municipalities were the ones to start working on this. And thanks to organizations like you, we have jumped on this wagon for time use change. Let me repeat something I've already said. Governments should be committed with this change. The different Spanish regions or different countries, all government levels, but especially top national government levels, should believe in these. The corporate world is very influential. They are very powerful. So we're talking about changing a lifestyle. These 2 hours, I think that both in Spain and in Catalonia, these 2 hours delay that we have in our lifestyle have to be overcome. And we have to leave them behind. And then something that is very important, the time use reform pact are key for a full gender equality. It's of paramount importance. If we really want to achieve full gender equality, it must go hand in hand with a change of living habits and lifestyle. So I'm talking now about high-level institutions and governments. They have to support us to implement this change. Otherwise, it will be very difficult and slow. Now, what happens with the trade sector? Shops. This is something you see when walking down the street, and if there is a closing time, well, that's sacred. And in Argentina, we are now preparing a panel discussion or a task force with representatives of all the shops in the municipality. And we want to do the same with the corporate world. That one will be tougher, but we will get there. Thank you very much to the 3 speakers for having shared your time precisely with us and with all the participants on YouTube. I just want to thank DIPLOCAT and the Barcelona Time Use Initiative for a Healthy Society for the opportunity and for having organized this wonderful session. And I now give the floor to Arianna.
Thank you very much, Maria Angeles, for moderating this session, as well as the different speakers for having joined us today. My role today is to draw to a close, and now I'll switch back to Catalan, by the way. My role here today is to draw this whole series of urban time use policies to a close. This is the last event of the series as a coordinator of the Barcelona Time Use Initiative for Healthy Society. It's been a pleasure for me to be able to participate in these series of talks that have been co-organized with DIPLOCAT. This has been 3 days of dialogue, exchanges of learnings, both for us and hopefully for everyone else who have been following this series. And I would like to congratulate everyone who's been with us today and on the other days, as well as the speakers for the 3 lectures. Now, in order to finish with this series, I would like to share a couple of general thoughts that I believe apply to all of the discussions we've been holding for the past weeks. First, an idea that has been mentioned on several occasions and other days as well, which is an opportunity to promote and expand this kind of time use policies. On the one side, because of the COVID-19 shock that made us rethink how we devote our time, but also because many of these policies are responding and probably offering a different kind of response to the challenges that we face based on different crises that we're going through: social, care-related, economic, environmental crisis. This series itself has been articulated on the basis of key challenges, such as the post-COVID-19 recovery, the 15-minute city, answering to environmental, economic, social, and care-related aspects, as well as the study of chronobiology today, which once again insists on a key issue, which is health and our ability to become resilient. So from that point of view, if we compare this with the moment in which urban time use policies started popping up, which was back in the 90s, we realized that we are going through what we could call a second generation of time use policies, where some of the fundamental pillars of the 90s are now being reinforced, but new ones are being added to the mix. We are seeing that these second generation time use policies have a clearly feministic approach because of the advances made in the past few decades. They also integrate sustainability as a key factor, as well as economic recovery. And somehow they highlight the effects of digitization, and especially, I believe, after COVID-19, as well as an approach that ever since its inception has become quite strong, which is citizen participation, this building consensus that we were just discussing. Now, all of these issues will have to be combined into these urban time use policies, or the second generation of them. And as Angel was just mentioning as well, to integrate them as part of the 2025 goal that the Catalan government set for itself, to make headway and achieve healthier, more egalitarian, and more efficient and sustainable timetables. Now, the second idea has to do with the goal of this series of discussions. We wanted to, of course, promote the exchange of best practices in terms of time use policies amongst the municipalities, which we believe to be a key step to promote this implementation in other cities and towns, so that everyone can know what has been done. So the realm of possibilities. This has been achieved, however, I think it was Jean-Yves Boulin who said this at the beginning. It is very important to keep working along these lines and to expand the European network of cities for time use, as well as the other national or regional networks available. So in order to imagine a better world, it is important to give each other mutual support. And as a result of this series, we will be publishing a report that will bring together all of the experiences we've been discussing these days, as well as the conclusions and final remarks that we have extracted, so we can all collaborate and achieve this goal together. And I would like to remind everyone who is seeing us that all of these lectures will be available on YouTube. As I was saying, this is not a closed process. It's but a seed that we are planting to promote the exchange of experiences amongst municipalities and to build a new urban time use policy agenda. That is why the conclusions of this report will be presented within the framework of the Time Use Week 2021, which will happen in Barcelona. It will take place in Barcelona from October 25th to the 31st. It's the only international week devoted to reflecting, debating, and sharing knowledge and experiences regarding time use policies. October the 26th, particularly, will be devoted to municipal time use policies, and we will be not only presenting the conclusions of these public debate series, but we'll also open a new forum for exchange among municipalities, following suit from what we've done these days. So I invite you to participate in the Time Use Week in October. So to sum up, and to finish this last event, this has been just one step, but we obviously are excited and looking forward to continue to work with this urban agenda of time use policies, helping municipalities to build urban rhythms towards a healthier, more egalitarian, more sustainable and efficient cities. A goal that we hope we will continue to develop during the Time Use Week 2021. Thank you all very much for being here with us, and see you soon.
Moltes gràcies.
Thank you.
Gràcies a tots.